Jacob, Nazigate. There's no other words of putting it. Parliament invited a 90-year-old Nazi, Waffen SS soldier. His name is Jaroslav Hunka. And the Speaker of the House of Commons asked to be given a standing ovation, which, of course, this was because Volodymyr Zelensky was there and Trudeau was there, and they gave him a standing ovation to a known Nazi. He shot Jews in mass graves, well known. Now, thank God that somebody spoke up about it. We'll talk about him in a moment. But now the pressure, the Speaker of the House resigns. Trudeau is calling it Russia misinformation. I wonder if he considered this Russia misinformation. But there's a lot of problems to the north of us in Canada. Jacob Prash.
First of all, he should have resigned, but he's also a fall guy. They're just shouldering onto him the full responsibility for what happened.
Yeah, he falls on the sword.
It's Trudeau and his party are responsible. It's not just the speaker, although I agree he should have resigned. What's really disturbing is the person who exposed it, a British journalist, was arrested Gestapo style for exposing it.
Unbelievable.
This is what you saw in California when somebody made a film exposing illegal abortions and the trafficking in human body parts. He exposed the crime and he was arrested for doing it and prosecuted by Harris when she was state attorney general. This is a war against free speech. It's a war against the First Amendment in America, but you see it happening in Britain and you see it happening in Canada. A war against free speech. They're criminalizing free speech. Even if you expose a crime or a moral outrage, they'll arrest you for it because you've said something we don't like. What's the difference between Ping and Biden and China and
Trudeau?
Well, there's no difference. Yeah. And this is a Tory government in Britain that did it. This is a conservative government that did it. What good is a conservative government if it's not conservative?
Just imagine if Labor was in there, and they would just speed up the whole thing to destruction. But back to the Canadian thing, Jacob. This is ridiculous. Zelensky's a Jew. A standing ovation to a well-known soldier. It's not like he's one of the last. He's one of the last ones. So he's there, standing ovation. Nobody bats an eye. Shot Jews in mass graves. This is. People have to be outraged, and they did it on Yom Kippur. Yom
Kippur. Well, does anybody think that people like Schumer or Feinstein or Blumenthal or any of these Jews in the Democratic Party care about the Jewish people or about Israel?
Not one bit. Not one bit.
How would you be in a party with Olmert or Tliab or these open Jew haters if you cared about those Jewish people? They don't. Yeah. Zelensky's a Jew the way Schumer's a Jew.
Yeah, they don't care. Yeah. David Lister.
Soros is a Jew.
There we go.
Oh, he's Jewish, but he's not a Jew.
Yeah. David Lister, thoughts on that Nazigate?
Well, I think that this man is now going to be, Poland has asked for him to be extradited. Justice. Yep. That's the only good thing I see that can come out of it. But now that Poland is not giving Ukraine any more weapons, he may not see a day of justice. The only thing for us is that he will see justice when he leaves this earth.
Very true. Now, Trudeau's got issues, got G20 issues that happened a month ago. Indian issues, obviously, he's been hiding terrorists in Canada that he's very upset about. Issues at the UN when he spoke there recently. The March for Children that's promoted by Muslims there. Obviously, there are some Christian groups involved in it too. Calls for his resignations are growing louder and louder. Jacob Pratt, you see him stepping down?
If he's forced to, but only if he is forced to.
Okay.
The Canadian people have a problem. They have the same problem you have in Britain and to a large degree in the United States. The political right or the conservatives are not conservative. It's like what just happened in Georgia this week. Instead of wanting to, the member of the state Senate who wanted to bring an impeachment charge against Willis, the judge going after Trump with a political motive, the Senate Republican caucus in Georgia voted to suspend him a Republican senator because he wanted to impeach this politicized judge, this political Willis. That's what he's. That's the Republican Party. Well, Britain, the Conservative Party is the same. It's a joke. And in Canada, there's no political opposition.
Yeah.
The right is not right. They're the equivalent of rhinos. Canadian rhinos, you got British rhinos, you got American. They're all the same.
Yeah, Pollier talks a big game, but I don't know, man. I think I don't think there's anything that they can do up there. Now let's go back to the journalist in the UK. His name is Warren Fortune. He dug all this stuff up. I mean, I applaud him for doing what a journalist ought to do. Can you imagine that? A journalist doing what they're supposed to be doing? This is what a world. He's independent, of course. He doesn't work for the BBC. He couldn't work there. And he looked up, went to the archives, found that he shot Jews in mass graves, which is incredibly insulting to any Jew to actually have a standing ovation by presidents, by prime ministers and presidents of a country. After exposing it, he was on a Skype call. The British police bust in. He's released on charges, but this is the charge, Jacob, not misinformation, malinformation. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, malinformation is something where there is no criminal culpability. You've just said something we don't like, so we're going to criminalize it for a political motive. And again, an attack on democracy, an attack on free speech. It's what you've got. A journalist, mainstream media journalist can lie, can slander, can engage in open defamation, can engage in political propaganda, editorialize the news along the lines of bias. But if somebody does actual journalism, investigative journalism, and researches and exposes something, they have to be criminally prosecuted. This is what's happening. It's again decline of democracy.
Intimidation, Jacob, or are they really going after him?
No, they're trying to set a precedent to scare other journalists from not speaking out. Certainly.
Same thing here in the States. You can't really speak out against anything. Yeah. In fact, there is an independent journalist, Owen Schroeder, who's going to face 60 days in jail because he just happened to be at the Capitol or in D.C. on January 6th. Yes. So just happened to be there speaking about it on his own podcast. That he didn't.
What happened in Ottawa, Canada, with the truck protest is the exact equivalent of what happened January 6th, a politically motivated prosecution of people who are really not breaking the law, at least certainly nothing felonious. The only one who did something that should be indicted for was that cop who shot that unarmed woman veteran.
That's right. Jacob, what does this mean, the obvious overreach of the government, weaponizing the different alphabet agencies and going after citizens, going after journalists? What does it mean for Christians in these countries? I mean, we talked about it before, but let's encapsulate it and really break it, put it in real short terms, exactly what does this mean? What are we seeing? Not only the evaporation of democracy for free speech, but what does it mean for Christians?
Well, we've already seen what it means for Christians. I'm no advocate of Roman Catholicism, theologically or otherwise. But we know what the Justice Department in America under Garland has done, calling conservative Catholics, traditional Catholics, basically a terrorist threat. We've seen Christian parents being investigated by the FBI or put on an FBI watch list for speaking out at school board meetings about the indoctrination of children and the use of pornographic materials in taxpayer-funded education, and the FBI going after them. We know what it means for Christians. Satan is the god of this world. His ultimate target is not the political left. They are just interim. His ultimate target is to stop the preaching of the gospel and to stop the word of God from being proclaimed. That is his ultimate aim, and that's what will happen.
No, you're absolutely 100% right. And
well, he tried to do it.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Jacob. That is ultimately at the heart of going after free speech. Jay, you've seen this in the States with gospel preachers on the streets and preachers that go, preachers of righteousness that preach the gospel. And what do they get when they speak out against sins of the nation, the sins of society?
They get legal troubles. They get fines. They go to prison. There's a perfect example of a legal immigrant came over. I think we saw the story where I think it was Danish, and he came over to preach the gospel, was arrested. He was accused by ICE of all these crimes, spent 400 days in prison. So
unbelievable.
That's your reward, and that's the reward. That's the reward we were told we were going to get.
No, Jesus told us that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But that is exactly what governments and you've seen it more the last, I would say, the last 100 years, the last 50 years, the last 20 years, the last 10 years, the last 5 years. It's just increasing, and to a point where now, I mean, we're looking at if Trudeau steps down, that would be a great thing for Canadians, in my opinion. But